In this episode, I'm joined again by Karen Partisch, who specializes in Craniosacral Therapy for people and horses. And we'll talk about resiliency and the importance of being able to move through stress and return to relaxation. We'll discuss how that dynamic manifests in the body is the same dynamic that shows up in training and things we can do to help. So here we go, episode 77, Resilience, with Karen Partisch. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. All right. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
This is the Karen and Karen show today.
All right. Yay.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to be here. I'm excited for this conversation because this is actually a conversation that we started to have, and then I said, no, let's save it for the pod, because the first time is always better than the trying to recreate it. So thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
Yeah. So before we get going, because what you do is just so kind of cool and amazing, and I find it a little hard to describe, is there a way you can kind of give a little nutshell description of what you do, just so people have a little bit more context?
My work is based in Craniosacral Therapy. I learned massage, and then I learned Craniosacral Therapy. And, well, actually, I should say I learned energy work, and then I learned massage, and then I learned Craniosacral Therapy. And Craniosacral Therapy, for me, combined energy work and massage. So for me, it's a light touch, hands-on modality that enhances the central nervous system and everything it's connected to, which of course is everything in your body. And there's so many things I love about it. It's all about allowing the body to heal itself and optimizing that process, which we know we're set up and designed to do that. But us humans, we want to overthink and do too much. And when we ride horses and we fall off and we get, and we overdo and all those other things, right? And then we have stresses like paying the bills and doing webinars and podcasts and all the other crazy things we take on. And it creates stress and tension in our system. And we don't always let that tension go. Sometimes it gets buried in us. And so by getting body work, I come in and evaluate your body, and your body will show me where things are restricted, stuck, not moving, over moving, right? And so I get to help on facilitate your body rebalancing, optimizing the nervous system, which will optimize homeostasis, removing stress, helping you be a little more resilient and more Awesome. Of a rock star. Yay! Yay!
Yeah, it's, when you were describing that now, I just got this image of how we can get tangled up in ourselves. And I feel like for speaking personally from what I feel when I get treatments from you, I feel like you just untangle me. And then I just feel myself like dropping into like during our treatments, I'm like, okay, I'm somewhere above the table. Okay, now I can feel the table. Now I'm down in the table. And then I'm just like, bye-bye. I'm lost in the ocean. Yeah. Let me know when I'm done, So, yeah.
And isn't there something beautiful about being that relaxed, right? That you're free to go to that wherever you are and create, and in that space of healing, right? And reconnecting with the authentic you. And that's what I love about this work, is that it allows that to happen.
Yeah.
In such a simple, easy kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. The work you do is amazing because it never feels like or looks like you're doing anything, but it's such a ride. And, so many times we think of relaxation being an absence of stress. But if I think of the scale of like, neutral and then, this direction for stress and that direction for relaxation, like there's a whole side over there. And, once you start tasting it, like, I just want to go there more. And so it's pretty trippy stuff, I have to say, but it's amazing. And to feel the results in myself and then my horses. So that brings us to like what we wanted to kind of talk about today. So last time, Karen, that you were out, we were, and you were treating my horses and me, and you made a comment of something about my horses respond to the treatment so easily, and just comparing that to the average other horse you treat. And I was like, oh, what? Do tell me more, but it was interesting. I was like, well, what do you mean by that? What exactly do you mean they respond to it? And then what exactly are you feeling? And then your answer, which I'm sure you'll share, and we'll talk about, just connected with something that is a strong intention of mine in the training that I do. So, what is the answer to the question of what do you mean by that my horses respond more openly to the treatment? And what are you feeling?
So your way of training, and I almost hate to use the word training because you always consider it playtime with your horses, right? That's what I hear you say again and again, and I love that. And so you approach your horses with such openness and curiosity, right? And so they have learned to operate well and efficiently in that space of curiosity. So when I come up against some sort of resistance in your horses, that's often this don't stop, let me figure this out kind of pattern. And usually they're cooking it out and quickly will blow right through it. Whereas a horse that isn't doing a lot of Dressage Naturally type work, it takes them a longer time to have that conversation with me. Your horses almost demand I show up with that conversation because that's what they're used to with you, right? And if I don't match what they are offering, right? If I don't hold up my end of the conversation, they're like, well, why not? Then why should I hold up my end if you're not holding up your end? So I love that about your horses, and how significant relaxation is to you and how you train. Mm-hmm. And so your horse's nervous systems know how to self-regulate. And there's a lot of horses that don't know how to self-regulate.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about, like, when you say that you meet the resistance and they want a moment to work through the resistance. So describe what you mean by the resistance, or like to give people a picture of what that is what's actually happening, what you're feeling, and what you're referring to.
Right. So the resistance might be mental, physical, emotional, right? So let's keep it the physical so that we have something really tangible for people to really think about. So it might be scar tissue from atomic surgery, right? It might be, I don't know, a shoulder not being able to really open up and go through, right? Or a little hitch in the giddy up, maybe, hard time picking up lead changes or can't do tempies or something like that. And I find a little tension in the fascia. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll find that and they'll go, oh no, there's tension there. And I'm like, what do you want to do about it? And they're like, oh, I can do something about it. Okay. So if horses were speaking, right? So I'm putting words in their mouth. And most horses, there's a couple of options here. One is they can deny it's there. The other is they can acknowledge it. And the other is they can say, stop, right? So there's sort of 3 options they can do. And your horses typically, and I will say most horses, they will say, oh yeah, there's a restriction here, and I'm going to brace a little bit because it's uncomfortable for me, right? So I match the brace, right? And just be with that. So you take a horse like Solana, and she's like, oh, that's my brace, and I'm proud of that brace, and and here we are with it. And I'm like, okay, that's really cool. I'm glad you like to hang on to it. What if we do something different? Oh, I don't know. Oh, well, maybe. And then it becomes, oh, we can do something different with it. Oh, well, what would you like to do with it? And your horses easily know how to do the multiple choice answers, right? Well, I can try this, or I can try that, I can try this. So your horses typically will come up against it and then figure out something else to do with it.
It's so interesting because, especially talking about Solana, and I'm sure I've talked about her on this podcast, and I know people who are in the video classroom have seen her, but that was her sort of modus operandi. Like, she would tend to block first, ask questions later, and then much later maybe open to the suggestion. So that was her go-to, is when presented with something at all challenging, or not even challenging, but like touching her somewhere, she'd harden. And you and I, that was one of the first things when you started treating her. It took a couple sessions before she entertained the idea of acknowledging and playing with it. But that dynamic was directly related to her training. So this, in the work I do is, play with things, wiggle it around, just try some possibilities until the horse chooses. So that's what I find so interesting, is this dynamic in training, which you could think is, mental, and then it shows up in I think it's a lot of it, some of it is conscious, but then in the fascia, I think it's so deep that there's this dynamic so deep in their body, and, which is coming first, I don't know. But I think that's why the training and then your work has been so powerful, because I feel like I've with Solana, I think I had to do both. I don't think she'd be going as well as she is now without the body work. Now, she also without me training her. Hopefully, it's not ever just one answer, but it's been fascinating to see how these dynamics that I see in the interaction and the training, you're describing when you put your hands on them and feel their energy. Yeah.
So I feel, as you know, lately I've been treating different horses when I show up at your place, and not always the same one, which is fun in itself too. And I'm finding a lot of the same restrictions that you're finding. So what I'm finding in the fascia, in the fluids and fascia, you're saying, yes, maybe it's in the shoulder, and you're like, yes, we've been having trouble picking up that lead, and, it's a little late, and, it will go often match what you've been talking about, and then work that fascia deep in. How do we get there? How do things start mobilizing? And again, with very light touch and a lot of intention, and allowing the horse to find their own way to allow the resistance to just melt out. I mean, if it's in fascia, it can just start melting out. And sometimes it really is just mobilizing fluids and allowing the fluid flow to increase, which will then better support the fascia and start to disintegrate any restriction that might be there, or adhesion or things like that. So,
yeah, that's very similar to a dynamic like of the circuit of energy. When you think, I need to get the energy flowing, through the whole horse's dynamic and movement, but sometimes there's imbalances or tension, and you start to peel those away, and then the energy can flow, which causes more things to be freer, and then you just get in the cycle where everything is helping everything else. You mentioned something about self-regulate, that their ability to self-regulate.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
So nervous systems. All right. So we can get back into a little anatomy and physiology here, and we can talk about the autonomic nervous system, which is I like to refer to as the automatic nervous system, because I think it helps people frame it up a little bit easier. So whatever's automatic for us, so like breathing, heart rate, blinking, swallowing, chewing, all these kind of automatic kind of things that we do without thinking about it, that's our autonomic nervous system. And under that category is fight or flight and rest and digest. And you are either in fight or flight or in rest or digest. It's one or the other. And within those two categories, I like to think, I visualize it as a rheostat switch, so you can get like really relaxed, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can also be like really present and really on and still be relaxed, right? So there's a wide range of relaxation. There's also a wide range of fight or flight, right? So there's that tension and that wide-eyed kind of stare where you can still function, but you're a little, I don't know what's going on. This is a little scary, to get me out of here right now, right? And so there's, again, that wide range. We want us and our horses to easily go through that dynamic, right? We don't want to be so relaxed that we can't engage. We also don't want to be so stimulated that we can't relax, right? Mm-hmm. So finding that there's so much advantage to both ends. We want to be able to respond quickly. We want our horses to be able to respond quickly. We want that fight or flight can really serve us well. Those of us who like to have coffee or black tea or, a little caffeine jolt, that's what it's all about, right? Waking us up and getting things going. And the downside of that is our focus gets really, really narrow, right? Which helps us get over our procrastination and get things moving and get the to-do list done, right? But we don't necessarily always see the big picture when we're in that, in more of a fight framework. Mm-hmm. When we're in that rest and digest, we've got a bigger view and we can see on the periphery better. And it means that more ideas can come in and support how we're doing what we're doing. So having that flexibility in our nervous system, autonomic flexibility, dynamic flexibility, it's everything. And when you come across a horse that is stuck, right, then what do you do, right? What do you do? So
yeah, and I love how you frame the positive, that there could be a positive in this realm of, fight or flight, because often we think of that as like, no, don't go there. But if we think about our own lives, I mean, there's people who like bungee jump and, jump off of cliffs, and I was going to say out of perfectly good airplanes. Yeah, I'm done. But there's reasons for that. I mean, that's stressful. Right. So I think we always have to be careful with our animals because we are so responsible for them, and they're not saying, "Hey, I want to go bungee jumping today." But for me, it's not about not going there, because life is life. It's gonna happen. Right. And sometimes, I've felt great pride and enthusiasm in my horses, and that gets on the edge of what they might feel like if they're a little, in that direction. And I think if we can play with those edges in a way that, we're getting that adrenaline, we're getting like some of that like raw happening, where they're not actually scared of us or whatever, but our nervous system gets a little heightened. And for me, the key is that you can go back down. And
Yes.
I've done a bit of reading about this importance of, heart rate variability. And for me, I think about it as being resilient. Resiliency isn't avoiding. Resiliency is like going there and coming back, go in the deep end of the pool, come back to the shallow end, go in the deep end, back in the shallow end. And that you can kind of play with that range, which is, I think, that's where reality is. It's things like this are going to happen, and training by nature is going out of the comfort zone. We're trying to do something we don't know how to do yet. And, things blow by and horses get scared. And I love this idea of, everything comes from and returns to relaxation in a training point of view. And, just to see that there's that dynamic, things are going to happen, but I don't think there are a lot of natural mechanisms for undoing stress. The evolutionary advantage is to err on the side of stay stressed. So you don't not notice something.
Stay safe. Right. So but, our brain is programmed to keep us safe, right?
Right. Splint the injury and get ready to run. You're probably going to live. But when you think of quality of life, that's where we've got to go back down into deeper levels of relaxation. So I love that you kind of framed the somewhat positive, but I think it's that resiliency is something I think about a lot in training. You want to keep them safe. Of course, you want them to trust, but you also want to kind of hey, let's explore some ranges.
Right. We have to push the edges a little bit, right? That's what life's all about, right? We want to be able to push the edges a little bit. And, if your horse isn't responding to you, a little tap with the stick, you want them to have a reaction to that and go, hey, what the heck?
I'm awake now.
Right. And on the other hand, you don't want that same reaction to last for 20 minutes either. You want the enthusiasm from that, but you don't want that initial jolt, right? So, so that kind of flexibility, and not that anyone should ever go crazy with the stick. I'm not.
I know. I feel like we always have to have that asterisk disclaimer, disclaimer.
Right. Right.
But I think a lot of people struggle, and myself included, if you feel like you have to, when I talk about harmony a lot and relaxation, but you can't attempt to avoid any level of your heart rate going up and things getting exciting. I think there's some positiveness
absolutely
to it.
Our nervous system actually requires or wants us to get challenged, right? We want stressors in our day. However, we want to be able to come out of those stressors and come back to a relaxed place. So yes, heart rate variability. We want our heart rate to increase with these stressors and then be able to, take a breath and have it drop back down.
Yeah.
Right? Same with our horses.
Yeah. And reading about, the heart rate variability, which is I looked it up. It's the measure of how smoothly and fluidly we adapt to change, and how quickly and effectively we're able to overcome and bounce back from challenging or stressful situations. And a low heart rate variability, just to use this as an example, is when you're nothing changes. So it didn't say you're always stressed. It said when nothing changes. So that could be stuck in stress, or it could be stuck in the mud, energetic mud.
Yeah.
So a high heart rate variability which means it changes often and appropriately, means resiliency and an ability to return to the parasympathetic. So I think it's good to know this. It's, go there and come back because the real magic is like what you said earlier, when you're able to have high, activate, quickly and high, with high energy, but while being calm. And so I think that really speaks to the importance of having a context of safety and trust with our animals. So we can go there because it's in this bucket of you're safe and you can trust me.
Yeah.
So I can, we can go a little bit like, okay, come on, game on.
Right.
Let's do this.
Right. Let's do it. And then find out, where the next level is, right? So how do you know when to ask for tempi changes instead of just one change? How to ask for the second one then, at what point, and that's, creating that tension and allowing that stress to flow through, right? So.
Yeah, and working recently, I did in the video classroom, I posted a video of working with Louis Lucio, and he has done. I did an episode with him too, but he done a lot of heart rate monitor stuff, and so he's come with a way of using the heart rate to kind of make training decisions. And in between, he's like, you can go there, you can get the heart rate up. The horse can be sweaty. They can be working hard. As long as when you stop, it goes back down to a certain level within a certain amount of time, and to not continue if it doesn't go down.
Right.
So that's how he makes decisions. Like, well, if you can be up at 120 and you stop and 30 seconds later it's down to 80, you're good to go.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So beautiful. It's a very scientific way of measuring some of this stuff that maybe sounds a little vague.
So, and again, that's what I love about your horses, is they have that kind of flexibility. They're willing to meet the challenge that you're asking them to do, and then when they're given time to rest, they rest and they recover. So again, they've got that heart rate variability, nervous system flexibility, that dynamic happening. That's when you got healthy nervous systems, when that happens, right? Yeah. So you got healthy horses and healthy fascia and all of that. So, and life's a little more fun, right?
Yeah. So. Oh, for sure. It's been fun. I've been playing with my filly Cora, who I think you've had your hands on her. Once for sure, maybe twice. So I've been playing with moving massage with her because it's just fun. I'm like, okay, what's your dynamic, little girl? And she's interesting because she's very sensitive and can often react very, like, if I go to touch her in her head and neck, she'll like come towards me and kind of be like, no, heck no. Get off of me, lady. I'm like, oh, interesting. Right. So it's kind of like, how am I gonna deal with this? And I've been playing with moving massage now, mostly working the energy space. Like I realize, I'm like going right through her energy and I'm trying to touch her body. And I'm like, oh, I can do it from like 18 inches away is the spot.
Right.
And then playing with because this is an opportunity. Okay, I'm doing something. It's causing stress. How am I going to deal with this? She's trying to bite my leg. Like, how am I going to deal with this? Because it's a moving massage. My intention is relax. So playing with not blowing through the threshold, feeling that resistance, and then setting up a little boundary of, well, if you go to bite me, I'm going to just gently yield you the other direction, show you another option. Right. And then wait for her to relax and then hand down. So for me, it's about setting up that dynamic. Here's a dynamic that's happening training wise. And I could either, perpetuate it and prove to her she has something to defend herself against, or give her some parameters, honor what she's feeling with me, and just, like you said in the beginning, meet the resistance where it is, and then thinking, what else could you do with this? And that's something I hear you say, when you're treating, you're like, oh, what's this about? What else could you do? And it's really, it's really fun. And I think these subtle dynamics, if we get out of the feeling the dynamic energy more than I need to get this yield done. I need to get this movement to happen. It's like when you feel the dynamic, address the dynamic, and then the results will show up. Right.
And allowing the horse to allowing the horse to find their own avenue. Because I don't want to pretend I know how to do that.
Yeah,
right? I don't want to.
that's the interesting part.
And I think, you and I agree on that too, even though we know some methodologies that work. It's also great to let the horse figure it out on their own, if that's possible. We can say, look behind door number 1, and they go there and it's like, oh, look, whoa, look what we found. Oh my God, it works. And, intention is so significant, especially with the horses. And so that makes it easier. And again, having those boundaries, this is acceptable, this is not. And helping them find their own answers and finding that space, right? Finding that space.
Yeah.
The space in their bodies, the space in the training, the space, to create more opportunity, right?
Yeah. And when I'm on the table and you're treating me, that's what
right.
I feel more spacious. And so that's just it's a treat. In training, because I think it's all the same. It's a dynamic of energy. In training, I think it's definitely harder to describe, harder to teach, because when you're teaching someone something, it's like, okay, here's choice 1, 2, or 3, and but the more I have some experience in training, so it's maybe easier for me to play with this. But I think anyone can do it. Is just sense the dynamic of the cause and effect of what's happening, and then when it's not working, just to kind of swim in that moment a little bit and stay curious. And kind of see and give that little bit of space where you don't go right to controlling things, and just kind of see what happens.
Well, I love that you say the stay curious part, because I think that adds a level of energy to it, like that curious energy. And so with your horses, they're used to that curious energy, whereas some other horses might be a little more fearful, right, when they come up against a resistance, because they're not shown them on a regular basis, or they're trained through the resistance. Right. And you bring your horses up to the edge of that resistance and say, all right, now what are we going to do? What if we try this? What if we try that? And they're like, oh, okay. Or Solana will say, well, no, first we're going to do it my way. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I've definitely worked with horses who've, been trained through the resistance, and the resistance just goes, they practice resisting and they get better at resisting, and the resistance goes deeper. And, my horse Teo, which is still an artwork in progress, but, you've felt him, and, that the blocking and the disconnecting, that when you think about fight or flight, there's actually a couple other F's. There's freeze. And then there's faint, So, he was deep into the freeze. Yeah. He was checked out. He was he pushed it all down inside. And so it's been for him, at first it's like, okay, stay calm and stay, stay calm was really the main theme. Yeah. Like, nice horsey, don't explode, please.
Don't explode. Exactly.
Yeah, don't explode. Please just stay calm. But now, if I really am thinking about what is his healing process, and what I'm starting to see now in him is he's expressing himself more. So it's coming out as what maybe some would look at as a training issue or a quote unquote disobedience. But I'm actually celebrating him. Like, tell me what for. Like, don't, if I'm asking you him to do something, it's putting a little pressure on. I'd much rather have him leap instead of go introverted and check out, because it's going to come out sometime. So I've been kind of playing with celebrating him expressing himself, which is a very common cycle that they go through after they've been introverted. And then I feel like, okay, now we got to go all the way through the cycle and not have the resistance get stuck so it has to explode out like that.
Exactly.
That it just flows through and we can all play in the moment. So it's, I just keep being fascinated at how that dynamic shows up in training and in fascia.
Yes. I mean, vagus nerve is very much in touch with that. And to watch him, watch the work that you've done with him and the treatments I've done with him every, couple of months when I work with him, to feel the tone, actually, he's got better tone in his whole nervous system and his vagus nerve. And yet he still, when he gets scared, his safe place to go is that highly introverted, freeze space. And it's like, okay, I'm safe here, when in fact it's not very safe right there, right? And not healthy at all. And so learning how to, so what kind of tools do you use to help him get out of that?
What kind of tools? I have, I have you. Get your hands on them. But for me, it's really, it's practicing it on the good days, right? So as part of my normal training sessions with horses, I go deep relaxation, moving massage, lots of, just stretching and hanging and, all different ways to deeply relax. And then I go there also, like, give me all, match my energy. Come on, dig in. And then back to relax. So it's every time I do that, I practice going there, coming back, going there, coming back. Then if we go there when it wasn't my idea, I already have some tools to bring it back. So I definitely not being afraid to go there and touch on it on the night, on the basically the days where he does feel calm and safe. And then when something does come along, I mean, sometimes he just goes way over the threshold and like, that's, there's nothing to do about it. A tree falls and it's like, well, that happened. But if, boom, but there's oftentimes, especially if it's training related stress, I better notice the first signs and not blast through it. So it's a lot about thresholds and acknowledging and going, oh, I see you. That just changed. Where are you? And then having, again, that variety of tools, whether it's asking him to do a little silly trick, which is it's great to have those tricks up your sleeve, because if they're really scared and not thinking, they won't do the trick. They're not emotionally present enough to do it. So that's a good indicator. Yeah, it's like, oh, he's not sick to do his little tongue trick. That means he's gone. And other times he can act stressed, but if I ask him questions, he still will he'll answer them, but he'll look stressed. So I'm like, okay, he's emotionally losing me, but he's mentally still there. Like, I better take care of it.
He's working on it. I love that. I love that, because so many, I'm sure of your listeners too, the people listening to this, have experienced those times when those horses are so stuck, and when you can rub their shoulder, or if you're sitting on them or standing next to them, do a good scratch on them and try to break that pattern of going into freeze, right? And find something really sensory that helps bring them back, like take a deep breath or move a little bit, or make some sounds and talk to them and break up that possible freeze pattern that they might be headed deep into, to start to break that up a little bit. That's another thing I love about your moving massage, because movement often will break up those kind of patterns. And with a lot of horses that want to be stuck, so just by moving can be like, oh my God, that might not be safe. And then creating, developing or pursuing the conversations that you're so good at having with your horses, that encourages less time in that freeze state, or towards a freeze state, and creates more flexibility in that nervous system. So the horse has to spend less time in a high stress state, and has a better toolbox to come back. And that's going to, by doing those things again and again, you're going to create a more healthy nervous system. and a better have better conversations with your horses. So
yeah.
So
yeah, and I really do feel like it is a conversation. I'm not afraid to talk to my horses. I think it keeps me breathing, and to make sure you know the message you're trying to give your horse in that moment. And sometimes to hear yourself say it out loud is helpful to understand if you're being clear or not, and to hear your own tone of voice, because then you have a chance to go, oh, that didn't sound very friendly or clear. And another little training tip too is whatever you need to talk to your horse about when you feel them getting into fight or flight, take that conversation, and on the good day, raise your standard. Don't, sometimes people are like, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. And then when the horse is freaking out, now they're demanding it has to be really good. Well, that's not going to happen. So switch it around and say, okay, I need hindquarter yield, or I need sideways, whatever it might be. I need to go, whatever, I need to stop. Whatever it is, on the nice calm days, just raise your standard. Do, graduate school PhD level hindquarter yield at the lightest touch.
Pushing that stress level, right?
Right. So doing that on the good days.
Resilience, yeah.
Exactly. So that then when the outside thing comes in and you need that in your pocket, you've got it. So you could look at that as just having a control mechanism, but it's so much more than that. It's just, it's setting up that dynamic. Yeah. That
pattern, right. Dynamic flexibility, right? Autonomic flexibility. We want that in us. We want that in our horses. We want that in the people around us, right?
Yeah. And that actually brings up a good point, is all this stuff we're talking about for our horses, check on ourselves. Like, how well do we know how to go into that realm of relaxation? Do we have the tools to turn frustration into curiosity in the moment, not just in theory?
Yeah.
And doing breath, can we catch ourselves and do some breathing exercises? I find it doesn't take much, but again, like, you're not going to turn into a Zen master when your horse is freaking out if you've never practiced meditation or breath work on the good, easy day where the music is just right and the candle is lit, So this is something to, to practice or to experience. So you can either practice breath work or at least get a treatment, massage, so that somebody else can help put you in that state. At least you know where you're heading.
Yeah, that's what I love having clients like you who are consistent with getting work, and allowing yourself to deeply relax and giving yourself permission to go to wherever it is you go to, and
I go all over the room. My ears go a mile apart and I float around in space. You have no idea.
You're right. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to know.
Well, I go all over the place, Karen.
Oh, it's good. It's good. And which I think kind of sets you up to be more creative, right? Because it's creating that space. You give yourself permission to fly all over the place, so that when you're up against a situation where you're stuck, you've got that creative expression, right? You've got a creative toolbox that you can go into and say, well, what about this? And start looking at things a little differently. Maybe I need to ask for help. Maybe I don't. Maybe I need 5 minutes just to sit on this for a little bit. So I love that. The curiosity and creativity and space, really, for me, summed it up when you put that wonderful little video with Cora and the clippers. When she was watching you clip, you gave her all the space she needed. You were in an area where she could come and go as she pleased, and she could go up and get as involved as she wanted to be, and scare herself a little bit and back out and then come back and watch her go from being curious and afraid and back in being curious again. And again, it was just a beautiful study. And and nervous system work, you know.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and I'll describe a little bit what that was, and I'll add the link to that video in the notes for this. But yeah, so I'm clipping one of my horses, and my filly was in the barn loose, as my horses often are, while I was clipping Natia. And so the filly, it was so interesting because the filly was like, "What's that?" And you could see her kind of in the background, like, "I'm not sure about that." And then she went around the other side of the horse, and like, "I'm not sure about that." And then she kind of snuck up the back, and she started to touch it. Then she scared herself a little bit, but yeah, she just floated around. And by the end, she was like trying to nibble. She was mouthing the clippers and touching it and totally relaxed. And I thought, gosh, if I had set out to say, "And today I'm going to get her used to the clippers," you know, I would be lucky if I had masterfully ended up with the same results that I got from just letting her, allowing her to work it out. So that was a really interesting lesson. And a couple times I caught myself going, "Oh, she's here. Let me put the clippers over here and let her, you know, perform some technique for getting her, you know, used to the clippers." And I had to catch myself. I said, "Karen, just clip the horse and see what happens."
Right.
And that took a very conscious choice from me to just see what was happening and kind of not like pretend like 2% of my brain was acknowledging what was happening in the background and enjoying it. And the other part was like, just focus on the horse that I'm clipping. Yeah. So that's cool that you picked up on that as an example of that, but you're right. It's like just to be in the space and allow the process.
Right. And to watch her, and especially being such a young filly, and I know Sharon enough, you know, who bred her, started her so beautifully, and then you've just opened that door even more, and allowing again that flexibility in her. So to see her get tense and then relax, and that get tense is like, "Oh, I'm too close, I need to back off," and she could, and then come back up, and it was fun. So watch that video because it's a great study.
No, that is fun. Study. It's like the training technique of not doing a training technique. But I think it's, you know, I had that same experience with clippers with my horse Monty, who when I got him was deathly afraid of clippers. I mean, the first time he was tried to clipped, it was like 2 sets of drugs, cross ties, a twitch. I mean, it was horrible. And he still kicked the clippers out of everyone's hands, and it was horrible. And then the day that I made a breakthrough with the clippers, because I was doing this gradually, was the day I headed out. I had cordless clippers, and I was out there, and all of a sudden I got this little message from, you know, him, the universe, whoever, and it said, "Take the halter off." And I took the halter off in the middle of this field, and he sat there grazed and let me run the clippers all over his body. So sometimes our techniques are actually holding back progress. And it really came down to, you know, I had to trust him, and he felt safe because he knew he wasn't trapped. I mean, it was the difference of, I mean, it wasn't like using the halter or doing much, but it was the difference of taking it off and saying, "I trust you, and it's okay if you leave." Because that's the message of taking off equipment. It says it's okay if you leave. I mean, you know, you're allowed to leave, and that shift was enough to give him a feeling of safety to let down, you know, to be open to it. So
that's right. I love that he felt so empowered by taking the halter off, and you felt empowered as well, you know, in that trust and safety, right, and space. And at the moment
I was sorry. I always forget to
go ahead.
Talk over people. I get so excited. Oh, darn. Now, see, this is why I interrupt, because then I can't remember what I was going to say. Oh, I remember now. That in the moment that I was taking the halter off, my brain was saying, "That's a really stupid idea, Karen, because he can run away and learn that he can run away from the clippers," which would be wrong. So that's what my intelligent brain was telling me. And luckily I didn't listen to that. And I said, "I feel that he needs to feel like, you know, we need more trust."
In this
which comes
circumstance. From the heart. right?
Which
comes from the heart instead of the head,
so,
right?
Yeah. So I'm undoing the knot going, this is dumb. And then it worked. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's how much I know. So it's just funny. The heart and the head are different. And we have to...
Can be very,
Yeah.
So our brain is doing everything to keep us safe. And sometimes it overdoes that. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important to have that dynamic in the nervous system. So when those kind of things come up, I used this analogy with a client the other day. I was doing a remote session with somebody talking about a nervous situation with their horse. And I used the analogy of, does he see the tiger running in the woods, or is it the neighbor's golden retriever coming over to say hello? Right? And so... because if it is the tiger in the woods, then you need to run. But if it's the golden retriever coming over to say hello, then you need to let your energy down and open up, right? Two very different things. But again, you want to have that dynamic in the nervous system.
So fascinating. Well, yeah, I think we've probably given people a little bit of stuff to think about and feel into.
I hope so.
Yeah, and explore next time you're with your horses.
Yeah.
So cool. So, good.
I think we've given them enough tools. I just want to make sure when people see that tension in their horses and want it to bring it back to more tone versus more tension, right? To create that flexibility. I want to encourage people to have the human start breathing so that the horse can start breathing. You feel your feet inside your shoes so the horse can start to feel a little more grounded and maybe a little more safe. Start to use some movement, break up something that might be blocked, right? So moving massage becomes so helpful for those kind of things. We're looking for that increased curiosity, right? And more connection and more engagement. And so keep after that in that moment. And that's going to, again, like you say, pack your toolbox a little bit better so that these, what might be a scary situation becomes just a scary moment instead of a scary 10 minutes, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and doesn't compound and yeah. Because sometimes that the tension becomes blocking, which becomes a training problem, which sometimes creates stronger A's, which creates So back to untangling ourselves, right? We're back where we started into the
Let's create more space. We're looking to create more space, right? Lengthen those spines, make them flexible. So. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Karen. I think we did.
Oh, you're welcome.
A lot of it, so
thank you. And where can people find out more about you and what you do?
Okay. So my website is karenpartisch.com, KarenPartisch.com. I'm actually starting to do little emails again. I'm getting a little more engaged with that. Yay! And and feel free to email me, Karen@KarenPartisch.com, and text me. I do some traveling, so even now I am up to Ocala once or twice a month, and based in Sarasota. I am doing remote energy sessions, and I've been doing them around the world, which has just been a blast. So I recently talked with a woman and her horse in Abu Dhabi, just a short bit ago. And it's just amazes me that we can have these conversations and get energy work happening and horses relaxed and changes made, and it's beautiful. So
yeah, you really helped Autonomic after his surgery. With some energy work, so remote energy work. So
right,
yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I look forward to seeing you
soon. Next time you come over here.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.